Thanks, President Stephen. Let us pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day to gather together in fellowship as Rotarians. We appreciate your presence with us over the weekend as we pack meals for those in need. We meet today to serve our community, representing everyone fairly and using our resources to promote the common good. We act as your servants to be patient, kind, and always mindful of the four-way test. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. We welcome your blessing of this food to the nourishment of our bodies and us to thy service. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff was supposed to offer health and happiness last week with the storm, and now he's doing the invitation. I appreciate you getting involved in all facets of Rotary. Rebecca Gunlockson is on her way up to introduce visiting Rotarians and guests. And as she does that, I just want to remind everybody about the cart bucket sitting on your table. Please give generously to the cart fund.
Hi everyone, and welcome. Today we actually do not have any visiting Rotarians. However, we do have quite a few guests. Oh, we do. We do have an addendum to that announcement. Eric Davis, our Assistant District Governor, is here with us. So it's very wonderful to have you. Thank you. Okay, and then on to the numerous guests that we do have.
I'm Mason Hardy with Creative Financial Strategies. Today I have a guest with me today. He's actually the president-elect of the Camden Rotary Club. It's John Metters. You all may recall that we've had some issues with our solicitor in Richland and Kershaw County. And John has successfully made the petition to be the write-in petition candidate as an independent candidate for our solicitor this coming November.
Hey, Wayne Cannon. I hope all of you have been reading the Rotarian. I have today as my guest Jackie Rivers, who is the Executive Director of the South Carolina Optometric Physicians Association. Glad to have her with us.
I'm Rex Wilson, and I have as my guest today the Right Reverend John Cole.
I'm Carrie Powers, and I have with me today Kim Mitchell with Castle Brothers Heating and Cooling.
Thank you. I'm Robert Weston, and I have as my guest today David Choate. He is in a position that everybody envies. He's retired.
Good afternoon, I'm David Reneker, and I have with me Shelley Clark. Shelley's our branch manager of Presscom at our West Columbia branch, and Shelley came and with her son helped with the food packing on Saturdays. We really appreciate that.
Good to see Shelley there and so many people from Presscom. Thank you, David. I'm Stephen Creech, and I have one guest, James Fuller. James, if you'll please stand. Y'all may recognize James. He's a former member of our club, and he is with Fuller Management Consultancy. They do dental practice management consulting work. And he's here as my guest. Welcome, James. Speaking of the Right Reverend, we have the Right Reverend Rex Wilson here today to give our health and happiness. So I'm going to invite him up and ask that he shield himself from the tomatoes. It's always good to have Rex here.
Don't get away before I get away. Hey, Kirkman, you better duck.
Fortunately, we're both tall, so I won't have any trouble with this mic at all. But the next guy is not going to be as tall. Kirkman's only 5'11", and I'm 6'2". I want to mention that Doc Ryle, who is a wonderful member of our club and a friend of many of us for many, many years, and she's been ill but has returned home, but as always covets our prayers. Reminds me of a woman who came home screeching her car into the driveway and ran into the house, slamming the door behind her and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Honey, pack your bags, I won the lottery." And her husband shouted back, "What should I pack, beach stuff or mountain stuff?" "Doesn't matter," she said, "just get out." Fortunately, my wife Paula only won $3 the one time and she wasn't going to get rid of me for $3. Groucho Marx said, "I was married by a judge, and I should have asked for a jury." That's a little mean, but I'll save it for you. I bought a little bag of air yesterday for lunch. The company that made it was kind enough to throw in a few potato chips as well. This guy eats potato chips. I've got a question. Which Walmart executive said, "Hey, let's buy 30 cash registers and only keep 2 open"? Nobody but me goes to Walmart. I get that. You know, if stupidity were a disability, most of my friends would be getting disability checks. That was another ugly one, wasn't it? Yeah. Some of us have friends, though, like that, and we appreciate it. Some days I amaze myself with my brilliance. And other days I'm looking for my phone while I'm holding it in my hand. Brains are an awesome thing, and I just wish everybody had one. That one's good, I don't care what y'all think. I ate a box of Thin Mints, but I didn't get thinner. I don't think they work. This is tougher than usual. I need to remind you, just 8 weeks ago I had back surgery. I need some empathy, some sympathy up here, please. I don't know about you, but Mr. Rogers did not adequately prepare me for my neighborhood. All right, I'm only going to do one more. If you really mean that, I got about 8 more left. Ever since I was a child, I've had a fear of someone being under my bed at night. So I went to a therapist and I told him, I said, "I've got problems. Every time I go to bed, I think there's somebody under me. I'm scared and I think I might be going crazy." He said, "Just put yourself in my hands for a year. Come talk to me 3 times a week. We should be able to get rid of those fears. How much do you charge? $150 per visit. I'll sleep on it." 6 months later, I saw the doctor on the street. "Why didn't you come see me about those fears you were having?" he asked. Well, I looked at it this way: $150 a visit, 3 times a week for a year is $23,400. A bartender cured me for $10 and I was so happy. To have saved all that money, I went out and bought a new pickup truck. "Is that so?" the doctor said with a bit of an attitude. "And how, may I ask, did a bartender cure you?" "Well, he told me to cut the legs off the bed, and ain't nobody under there now."
Thank you, Ray. Always entertaining. I appreciate the efforts you put into that. How many of you watched golf yesterday afternoon and saw the Tiger Woods come back? That was pretty incredible, wasn't it? Tiger's a polarizing figure, but no doubt probably the greatest golfer ever. And when you're talking about comebacks, everybody likes a comeback, and it kind of tees up the next bit of our meeting, and I'd like to welcome somebody back. You could call it a comeback, you could call it a miracle, you can call it whatever you want. But so glad to have past President J.T. Gandolfo in the room today.
President Craig, Representative Finlay, and my fellow Rotarians. I'm here for exactly one reason. I'm here to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The outpouring of the prayers and well wishes from around this entire city was just absolutely amazing. But the most outstanding outpouring, checking on me, came from the Columbia Rotary. And I want to tell you how much that means to the healing process. I became friends with the director of research, leukemia, City of Hope Hospital. It was no big deal. He was a wisecracking Italian from Rome, and one morning I'm actually in the room and Jonathan is there with me, and John says, the doctor's here. Well, tell him I'm in the shower. And he said, okay. And then I call out from the shower, Doc, are you coming back? And he says, maybe next week. And I go, oh my, this guy is going to be something else. Well, he is an absolutely brilliant fellow, but he gives the credit to the healing, not so much to the medicine, but to the 4 pillars. First pillar is your faith in God. Then it's what you eat, how you exercise, and the support of family and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you the Columbia Rotary has been absolutely outstanding. On behalf of Mary, Jonathan, Angie Kelly, 2 little kids and 1 on the way, we thank you. There were 2 pieces of philosophy that I got. Second day, Richland Hospital, back March. First piece of philosophy came from the sister of our pastor. She called to tell me, she said, John, don't ask why me. Well, actually I never had, but she put it so poignantly when she said, ask, why not me? And I thought, wow, yeah, you're right. What makes me so special? Why not me? And I carried that forward. And actually, I feel very special because the blessings of first of the miracle of this healing, and secondly, the blessings that have come from this have just been, well, they're a godsend. The second piece of philosophy I got was, I'm sorry, Jan Linsky, Father Linsky's sister, when she asked me that, stage 4 cancer. She's still with us. The second piece of philosophy I got came from our pastor and our corporate chaplain, both at the same time. They told me, it's not about you, John. It's about everybody who is around you. And I'm going to ask for my fellow Rotarians who have ever had a bout with cancer, or, as I like to call it, in country right now. Would you guys stand up so we can recognize you, please? Ladies and gentlemen, these are the heroes. Let's give them a round of applause. On their behalf, we ask you to continue to keep us in your prayers, and we will do the same. Thank you so very much.
Great to have you back, JT.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Now we're on a streak of introducing past presidents. We have past President Michael Kahn up to do a new member induction.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Stephen. And I'd like to call forward a special guest, Modesta Brinkman, and her sponsor, Jerry Bright. If y'all would turn and face the club. Come on up here. You'll want to remember Modesta's name and welcome her graciously to our club. Can anyone in this room speak Tagalog, the language Tagalog? No, I didn't think so. Modesta Brinkman, who hails from the Philippines, where Filipino is her native tongue, can. Modesta, whom some call by a similar sounding Odessa, actually seems to like her given name though, Modesta. So if you can remember that, that'll make her happy. Her last name, Brinkman, if it got your attention, that may be because she is married to the author David, who is the son of our former member here and the head of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, Fred Brinkman. You may remember Fred, that's her father-in-law. She and David have 2 sons, and she's still close to her 94-year-old mother and siblings who live in the Philippines. By the way, they're recovering from a hurricane much worse than Florence, so please keep her family in your prayers. Modesta is an international girl, and she and David have traveled widely and acquired enough memorabilia, archaeological artifacts, etc., to start an unofficial museum. I'm serious about that. They have sort of a private museum of all these collections. Sounds like the kind of thing that might make for an interesting Rotary program one day. With a BS in Science from St. Louis University in the Philippines, as well as a supplemental degree in Technology from Midlands Tech, Modesta is now the agent and bookkeeper for HistorySoft, LLC. HistorySoft deals with, they make applications for historic sites around. She enjoys her volunteer work with the Filipino American Association of Greater Columbia, where she has assisted the treasurer, she's been the secretary, and get this, she has served as a dance instructor. We have hardly any dance instructors in Rotary. And it's not jazz and it's not ballet. But I do see we've stared over here. It's not classical ballet. It is native cultural dance from the Philippines that she does. So if we can get her to talk about historic sites, perhaps she can also show us some dance moves. A couple of weeks ago, I introduced to you Beth Carrig. Y'all might remember that, noting that we had hardly ever, I think I may have used the word never, had a member inducted who was the youngest of 7 children. But today, Modesta has that same claim to fame, youngest of 7. And you'll have to seek out Beth, Modesta, and y'all can have a good swapping of childhood stories. So please face me if you would, and Jerry, if you got a pen to put on yet, here we go. Modesta, we want to welcome you to the Columbia Rotary and to Rotary International. I want you to remember the magic number of 1.2. That's 1.2 as in million. That's Rotarians around the world that are now your new friends and playmates. And we're all engaged in the same thing: peace, understanding, health, and projects large and small. In fact, this past Saturday, our club was working together to pack lunches for Harvest Hope Food Bank. And around the world, Rotary is working on projects as big as eradicating polio. It's quite an organization to join. Many of Columbia's key leaders are part of this club, and that's really why you've been sought out as well. Your talents have been recognized. And we invite you, as you join, to get active on the committee and to share your various talents and gifts with this club. On your way to becoming a member, you've had good exposure through Jerry. You've probably met with the past president. Certainly you've picked up information just sitting at the tables. So as soon as your dues are paid and you've had a chance to attend the fireside chat, you'll be an official member, and I'd like to welcome you to what will be one of the greatest associations with which you'll ever have the chance to encounter. Welcome to Rotary.
Welcome, Modesta. She's been coming to many, many meetings, even came to our food packing this past weekend. And I can tell you're a very engaged person, and we look forward to all you're going to bring to the club. And now I want to welcome up past President Andrew Clarkson and another special guest, Mackenzie O'Quinn from Water Mission International.
Thank you, President Stephen. I want to give you all a quick update on a project that we embarked on a couple of years ago. Under the leadership of past President John Backus, we started on a water project. Water projects, and to partner in this project, we have asked Water Missions to be part of this, and this is Mackenzie O'Quinn, and she is an engineer in biological and agricultural engineering, which I think is great for this purpose. And she's going to give us a little quick update on that water project and where we stand. We're not there yet, but we're within a grasp of getting this thing online.
Thank you, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you today. As Andrew mentioned, I'm Mackenzie O'Quinn, and I'm the project manager for our Latin American and Caribbean country programs at Water Mission. And so, first of all, thank you so much for being willing to partner with us on this project. We're really excited. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background and just kind of an update on the community you're going to be helping bring safe water to. So our Peru country program began in 2006, and we have 2 offices in Peru now. If you can, I'm not sure if you can see the yellow star over Iquitos. That's Iquitos is on the Amazon River, and that's where our main office is. And then we also have a second office where the orange diamond is in Piura, and that's on the west coast of Peru. So in the Iquitos office, we have 10 full-time staff members, and in the Piura office, we have 4 staff members. And our country director for our Peru country program is Juan Simon. And Juan is actually a Rotarian himself. I believe he's actually the president of his Rotary Club in Iquitos, Peru. So it's always exciting when he gets to partner with Rotarians around the world to bring safe water to people in Peru. But the specific community that you're going to be working with and doing your project with is called Chalaco Pilado. And so if you can see on that map there, it's on the west coast as well, so we'll be served out of our Piura office and the staff members there. And the community of Chalaco Pilado, what we're looking at doing to bring them safe water is they have an irrigation canal where we'll be using as the source water, and we'll be pulling water out of that and treating it with a living water treatment system. And this next slide, you'll actually get to see what that looks like. That's a patented water treatment system that Water Mission's founder, George Green III, along with a group of engineers actually created. And so it basically acts as a mini water treatment plant, and so it has filtration and disinfection through chlorine, all in that compact unit. So we'll be using one of those in the community of Chalaco Pilado to treat the water. And then if you can see, that unit will be built in an enclosure, and so at the enclosure we'll train an operator to run the system and to sell water to the people in the community. We'll work with our community development staff to create, work through the finances to figure out what price makes sense for the people to pay so that this is sustainable. And we will also have a tri-motor which will deliver water to houses that are further out in the community to make sure that everyone is able to use this and will start drinking safe water. When I was talking to Juan about this project the other day, he recently visited last week this community, and he was really excited because the people in the community are really excited. They know that the water they're drinking isn't safe now, and so getting to hear that safe water is coming to their community is really exciting for them. The government actually put in a piped water system here, so there is piped water, but it's not safe to drink. And so Juan's really excited because there's already pipes going to the school and the clinic, but we also have an opportunity outside of this initial part of the project to chlorinate the water that's being piped to the clinic and the school, and then the kids at the school and the people using the clinic will be able to have safe water in those places as well. So we're really excited about this project, the community's really excited, and I can't thank you enough for being willing to walk alongside us into this community in Peru and transform these people's lives through safe water. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to grab me later.
Thank you very much, Mackenzie, and thank you, Andrew, for agreeing to spearhead that for our club. Just as a little bit of background, a couple of years ago, we did a fundraising project for our Century Fund, and we raised $17,500 that was restricted and given toward a water project. And so we've been holding on to that money for a little bit of time now, and it takes some time to identify a community and a place where that money can go. Through the matching grants of the district and through Rotary International, we can turn that $17,500 into over $60,000, and that's more than enough money to do a water project. And fortunately, we have leaders in our club, folks like Andrew Clarkson, who are going to help watch this over the next year and a half or so as it unfolds. There'll be some training and things to take place, but I think it's really going to be a worthwhile event and a foray for our club into some international service. So it should be a good thing. Speaking of service, this past Saturday we had our service project, first service project of the year, the food packing. I can't thank you enough, those of you who came, those of you who brought your colleagues or loved ones. We had over 65 people show up. We had 10 students from the Rotary Club at Carolina. We packed over 10,000 meals, servings, in a little over an hour. We had a DJ, we had donuts, coffee, we had a great time. That's really what I'm hearing. And I want to thank Anderson Bass for his leadership in getting the people to come. And I just want to thank everybody here who came. I thought it was a fantastic event. Also, real quickly, is Kathy Kennedy, I can't find you in the crowd. Kathy, do you have a minute?
Okay, I can do it in a minute.
Kathy's on the board of the Central Carolina Community Foundation. She has an update for the club really quickly.
Great. I want to tell y'all about an initiative that Central Carolina and the Knight Foundation are doing in Columbia on Wednesday, October 24th. It's called On the Table. And it's not a traditional event, it's an event that you actually create. You get together, have a meal with your friends and neighbors, and you talk about what is great about our community and what you would like to see changed. At the end of the meeting, then everyone will go to a website, which is onthetablecola.org, and fill out a survey of what you talked about. And then the Knight Foundation will help us put this into a nice, slick brochure that we will then give to the leaders in our community and hopefully get some things done. So I put a information sheet on your table. You can find out more at onthetablecola.org. Please sign up to host. If you do, then on October 2nd, there's a cocktail party / training session to tell you how to be a host. So I hope that you will try this because it's our first year, but we expect that it will be going for a number of years. It's been going in Chicago for 6 years now. Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce past President Rusty DePass, who's going to introduce our speaker.
Good afternoon, and let me mention one item quickly that somehow was left out of health and happiness, not Reggie's fault, but our member, Bill Rogers, probably one of the longest standing members of this club, died on September the 12th. His funeral was yesterday, and Bill was founder and president of Bonnet's Insulation, Bonnet's Contracting and Consolidating Systems, and just did enormous and very generous work in this community for a long time. He was 93 years old. He hadn't been able to come to meetings for quite a while, but I used to call him and visit with him from time to time, and he was just a wonderful guy and very dedicated to Rotary. Our speaker today is Kirkman Finlay. I have tried to figure out when I first knew Kirkman, and let's just say it was a long time ago. I worked with Kirkman's daddy, who used to drive me crazy with his politics, but he was a wonderful guy and certainly a visionary mayor for the city of Columbia. In fact, I would say the last really visionary mayor that the city of Columbia has had. But be that as it may, his parents have become good friends over the years, and when I ran for the Senate, Kirkman came to me and offered his help, which I very readily accepted, and we have really been close friends ever since. But it has been a pleasure to see him throw himself into public service. He served for 4 years on the Columbia City Council and was instrumental in bringing to public attention just how badly the finances of the city were being managed and just how broke we were. Anyway, and then of course he ran for mayor. That was unsuccessful, unfortunately, but he did make a run for mayor, and then a couple of years later decided that he would run for the State House of Representatives, which he did in, I think, 2010, 12, and has been a member of the state legislature ever since. He has established himself as a conservative, but one who is open to new ideas. Lee Lumpkin loves him. Where's Lee? Yeah. He's all about the arts, and Kirkman is also involved in a project of his own called Finlay Scholars, for which he gives and raises money every year to provide supplies for school children, underprivileged school children in the Columbia area who wouldn't otherwise be able to have these things. Kirkman is a farmer. He's a restaurateur. He's owned several restaurants in Columbia, businessman. And the thing that I like most about Kirkman, and I hesitate to say this, but the late Marshall Kibler, whom I worked with for over 20 years, used to refer to people like Kirkman as members of the Lucky Sperm Club. I hope that doesn't offend anybody. Anyway, it's certainly not something that he has any control over. But the thing that I like most about Kirkman is that he gets up every day and goes to work and works for his community, and he doesn't have to do it like many of us do have to do it. And anyway, that's just the thing that I like most about him. He's come today to give us a view of the SCANA situation, Old Dominion, and the mess that they have driven themselves into, the ditch that they've driven themselves into. And we are delighted to have him here, and I think you'll find that what he has to say is very eye-opening. Kirkman Finlay.
It is not often I'm introduced where the introduction has not only sperm, but doing it in the same sentence. What you realize is that if you're following Rusty to pass, you always need to be ready for what may come your way. I was asked today to come speak about SCANA, SCNG, and I'm going to do that briefly, but then I'm also going to move on a little bit to Santee Cooper. I think Rusty made one very interesting point. When you're in the State House, a lot of people show up at your door with interesting little comments, questions, concerns, some of which are absolutely crazy, some of which are very valid, and some of which just take a little bit more thought and effort and investigation. Probably 3 years ago, maybe a little bit further back, Lynn T. with the League of Women Voters and Frank Knapp with Small Business Chamber of Commerce showed up, and they were discussing SCNG, the VC Summer Plan, and the Baseload Review Act. And I knew very little about it. Fortunately, I was not in the General Assembly when the Baseload Review Act was passed, and I do believe it was intended to be a very good piece of legislation to ensure South Carolina's electrical future. At that time, electrical rates were going up. There was some question about whether coal was ever going to be allowed to be used. The demand on electricity was growing almost every year, almost double digits. The decision was made to embark on building nuclear power plants, and that's really about all I knew. Not being Dr. Gunluxon, I was not able to do the math as quickly as some, but I kept walking around asking people, what's going on with this plant and how does it work? And the two things I discovered were that people didn't really understand. And I was told over and over again that I didn't understand. And that's why I'm asking. You know, I need some enlightenment as to exactly what's going on. And the basic premise behind the Base Load Review Act was that the utilities would be able to borrow SCNG and would be guaranteed a 10.5% rate of return on their equity and debt investment. Well, at 2007, that seemed like a reasonable rate of return. Well, by 2009, 2010, with rates cut, what was happening was it became the greatest financial arbitrage that South Carolina has ever seen. When you can spend money and get paid a guaranteed 10.5% rate of return and borrow for 40 years at 5%, which is what SCNG SCANA was doing at the end, there is no incentive not to spend every single nickel you can get your hands on. I mean, think about it. On a $2 billion debt issue, they made $100 million not running their business. That was the spread on what they were paid versus what they were returned just on the interest investment. That doesn't include management fees. It doesn't include anything else that flowed through those costs. Just straight up financial engineering. So, as I began to ask questions, what I discovered was no one could really explain to me how these projects were progressing. I remember having Duke Scott in front of ORS, the head of ORS in my office, and he kept telling me that, well, we're 70% done on one nuclear reactor according to budget. I said, but where are we on the ground? Then you go, well, 40%. And I said, dude, that doesn't work. I mean, if you spent 70% of the money and you achieve 40% of the work, this is going to end badly. And this is going to end really badly. And as I continued to push, where I was blessed was Jay Lucas, the Speaker of the House, I think at first, just sort of to get me out of his office, would say, Kirkman, you go chase that down, come back when you have something next. But over time, as we talked about it, he became increasingly concerned. By the time that we got to, I would say the end of 16, it was beginning to get very hot. I went out to meet with the management at SCNG, and I spent about an hour in fairly heated debate with the CEO, CFO, and their lobbying team. And I will tell you the one thing that I came away with. There was no one in that room, including me, that could either design, build, or run a nuclear power plant. There was also no one in that room that could explain how to do any of the three. At that point, we were in about $7 billion. By my very rough math, we were 30% complete. Maybe 40%, maybe. Maybe. You know, let's just say we're a third done, you've spent $7 billion. That argues that plant, those two plants were going to be $21 billion by the time they were done. 2x, 3x their original cost. They were going to produce power that no one could ever afford. Even more horrifying was that China at that point had completed the same style of modular reactor and had yet to interject or introduce nuclear powered fuel to it yet. I don't believe they have as of today. If you know anything about China, their environmental concerns are not quite ours. If they are unwilling to fire up a nuclear power plant, what the hell are we going to do? I mean, and understand this was supposed to be a modular plant. The idea being that every one built would be almost an exact replica of its predecessor. On site, they were making 600 engineering changes a month. Y'all, at this point, they're 5 years in. That's 35,000 engineering changes. Many of those changes were not by certified architects or engineers. You know, you're like, guys, we have seen what happens when nuclear power goes bad. Perhaps we need to step back from this a little bit. They told me again I didn't understand. One of the most distressing moments of the whole debate was in May of 17, about a month and a half before they terminated the project. And this was when I knew the game was over. It was all over with the weeping and the wailing. I was meeting with the then CFO who has become CEO. We go through a meeting and it was pretty heated. And he goes, well, what would you do? And I said, Jim, if you're asking a double major in classics and ancient history how to build a nuclear power plant, the game's over. Stop. I mean, if you need my advice, y'all have lost. Go do something else. But what I will tell you is, how many of y'all have heard the term regulatory capture? Regulatory capture means that the entity regulated has in some form or fashion captured control of the entity who regulates it. I sat in a speaker's ceremonial conference room and watched the SCANA lobbyists scream, to the point that a fellow lobbyist put his hand in front of him and said, you know, you need to get this under control, screaming at his regulator. How many people in this room are going to scream at a cop? How many of y'all are going to scream at the IRS? When you are the lobbyist for a company that's put $4 billion of investment in, and you are comfortable screaming at your primary regulatory agency in front of a member of the General Assembly, your disregard for that entity could not be more clearly delineated. So, where we sit today. Here's where we are. House, Speaker Lucas, Michael Anselmo, a lot of people did a lot of very good legal work. We took a bill to committee with the Senate. We effectively reduced, on an impermanent, short-term basis, the rate that we were charged for the nuclear power. 18% of your electric bill up until April had been attributed to nuclear power. The House and Senate, and I would argue under Jay's leadership, took that down to 3%. With Trump tax changes, effectively that number is zero. Dominion, again threatening that they would leave, they were going to sue us. Tom Farrell had some very hot comments that we were gambling with the future of the state. He was right. We saved y'all 18%. $300 million in 8 months. They took us to court in seeking injunctive relief. Court summarily dismissed it. They then asked for an expedited trial. That was rejected Friday. So we've won the last two. We feel like the court has probably done a fairly good job of telegraphing to Dominion that their concerns have not had the validity that Dominion had hoped. The thing that scared me, we had hearings, and Tom Farrell, the head of Dominion, kept saying that what they wanted was the legislature to bless the Public Service Commission increases over the last 5 years, regardless of merit. I think Mr. Meadows will tell you that my blessing of fraud should not make fraud okay. In essence, what Dominion was saying was they wanted to maintain that rate regardless of how it was attained. So, if SCANA had been less than truthful, that's fine, they still get the money. We said, guys, we're not doing that. Just no chance. Where we are now is that the PSC has until December to meet. My guess is that the PSC will make what we call the experimental rate, or this intermittent rate, permanent, which will leave the rates, which had grown on electrical power 18% at about 3%, but because of the way the utilities are taxed, it's actually going to be about where it started in 2010-11. What does that mean for SCANA? I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that Dominion will show up and retrade the deal with SCANA's shareholders. The regulatory environment is certainly not what they'd hoped for. I think that the SCANA deal is in many regards in the 7th inning. Santee Cooper is another kettle of fish. SCANA, the one blessing was that they did half of their spending with equity. In other words, they brought shareholders in. Santee Cooper has no shareholders. So their $4 billion is all debt. It has an implicit guarantee of the state. The state's geo bonding capacity available is less than $2 billion. Santee Cooper has over $8 billion of debt outstanding. From a balance sheet point of view, their liabilities exceed their assets. If you believe, as I do, a $4 billion hole in the ground in Fairfield County is not worth $4 billion. I mean, their assets outstrip their liabilities. SCANA, we were fortunate in that the shareholders took half the hit, rates were high, and we were able to bring those back down. For Santee Cooper, it is exactly the opposite. They had no equity shareholders. Their rates have only begun to go up. In addition to that, we're watching right now to see if the Granger Ash Pond on the Waccamaw River is overtopped. And if it is overtopped, is it breached? I mean, we've all seen what's happening in North Carolina with some of the Duke coal ponds. There are some real issues here that we are going to be dealing with. Santee Cooper is next on our list, and it is going to be a huge issue for us to deal with. The $4 billion and the $8 billion in toto that they have in debt is nerve-wracking. But when you bring in the state's credit rating, implicit contingent liabilities, what happens if this is actually put back as a true liability of the state? Do we have control of the cash flow? It becomes a real issue. I mean, we can become, if we are dumb, which I think Mr. Wright would argue is the status quo that we generally operate under, we can make South Carolina junk bond overnight. So we need to pay attention and continue what we've done with SCNG, and I think we're very blessed that we have a lawyer as the speaker right now who is paying attention and staff who is focused, that we do not let that happen. Because while I do not think it is imminent or the only course, it is a potential problem that we need to pay attention to. You know, I am happy to answer any questions. And please, I think for a change, we're actually on top of managing the Santee Cooper situation as well as we can. I think you will see management change at Santee Cooper. We are hoping that in the intervening 3 months, or at least I'm hoping, that management and the board will do the right thing and say after losing $4 billion, perhaps we ought to give somebody else a crack at it. I think if they choose not to do that, we may have to put it in slightly more or slightly less delicate terms. I think we're probably going to move from being polite about asking to removing people. But if you lose $4 billion, there's got to be some penalty. Are you happy with me taking questions?
Yeah, certainly.
Sure. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
You made it sound like, and forgive me, I'm naive, I didn't grow up here, so I'm still new to this, but.
I can't hear the question.
Sorry. You made it seem as if you hadn't done the if you hadn't investigated all of this to begin with, that we'd possibly still be in this situation and SCANA would still be, you know, just kind of not finished with the power plant. Is that the case, or am I misunderstanding the timeline?
They were spending in May of 2017 $300 million a month. How long that burn rate could continue, I would like to think that it wouldn't have lasted another 6 months. I mean, what was happening was Santee Cooper's debt to equity ratio was getting all out of whack. And Santee Cooper was eventually the one who pulled it. But you know, bad ideas have a long history. I mean, they can survive.
Well, thanks for staying diligent.
It It was one of the more interesting things I've done recently. Yes, sir.
Who keeps the balance sheet at the State House, and are you worried about the $20 billion we owe to the retirement system?
Understand there is no state balance sheet. I mean, there is a cash flow P&L. We have liabilities totaled up, but we never sit down and say, what are the assets that offset the liabilities? Because the asset that we're counting on is y'all paying your taxes in some form or fashion. I mean, look, think about it like this. We run an almost $30 billion flow-through business on a 12-month budget. The longest we budget, truthfully, is 18 months. So we'll start in November for a budget that begins the following July 1st. Why we are not doing a 2-year budgeting cycle so that you spend 1 year, the first year of the session setting out the budget for the next 2 years, and then the next year investigating how people are actually spending their money, I don't know. But there seems to be resistance to it. Yes, sir.
If, in SCEG's case, if they haven't lowered their rates,
Yes, sir.
and I don't know what their debt service is, and they get many in these deals falls through, and no other utilities will allow, is there only alternative bankruptcy?
Absolutely not. We, Patrick, Dennis, and I went out to visit them in August, and we outlined the steps that would be required to securitize their debt. Because they are a regulated monopoly, all that would mean is that the first cut of their revenue would be used to pay off their bonds. So what it's designed to do is used in Florida, I think at the Crystal River site some years ago, was to prevent a disorderly bankruptcy. So that option is on the table. They are not enthralled with it, I think, because we're not going to let the same group have another crack at that one either. I mean, if you've lost $4 billion, we're not going to go securitize your debt with the same leadership. I mean, I'm not the most politically astute guy in the world, but I know that that one is a way to find something else to do with your free time. Yes, sir.
You say you think that eventually the Dominion sale will go through?
Dominion has told me 3 different times if this doesn't happen, they're leaving. Well, I mean, by the 3rd time, the threat begins to lose some of its efficacy. I mean, if you've told me 3 times, if this happens, if you do this, we're leaving, and you don't leave, and I continue to see ads everywhere, I have to believe that they think there's a little bit more juice that can be squeezed out. So no, they have not told us they're leaving yet. I mean, they've threatened to, but they have at no point terminated. Yes, sir. Bernie.
Dexter, a private sector company, negotiated to buy Santee Cooper. As the state agency said, Cooper doesn't pay a lot of taxes. If a private sector company were to buy it, aren't their rates by definition just going to explode? The SCG, by contrast, is the largest property taxpayer in South Carolina. If you pay Santee Cooper, the 2nd largest taxpayer, aren't their rates just going to explode?
Well, their rates are going to explode.
Anyway?
I mean, they believe that their rates are going to have to increase something along the lines of 18%. They are servicing their interest payment with part of the settlement money from Toshiba. That's just their interest. When they go to P&I, when they start reducing principal, then hell, you can stretch it out. Once you get past 30 years, you're paying so little principal anyway, it's all interest. That ship is getting ready to hit the dock. We just don't know how badly. Yes, sir.
A question more with marketing. I was in Atlanta the last 2 weekends, looking at a global still shot of Atlanta, and there was a picture of a Falcon game in Mercedes Stadium, still picture, and on the board I could see SCANA Energy. At the Clemson Tech game Saturday, the time clock under it was sponsored by SCANA Energy. And it hit me, what are we doing marketing, what are they doing marketing in the state of Georgia with all this going on.
I think they have some subsidiaries over the line. They have some in North Carolina. But I mean, understand this game is, the deal that was offered by Dominion put forward in a very simplistic way for the average ratepayer was, you pay us $4,000, we'll give you back $1,000 and a small rate cut. I mean, it was auto finance. I mean, it was payday lending. I understand it. I mean, heck, if you can get it. But this is a lot of marketing. This is a lot about convincing people that what you've got now may be the best deal. It was that fear. It's the, we're going to go away, you're going to lose in court, this is going to be it, it's going to be worse. And the difference is that I've had the comfort of knowing that the state is willing to prevent a disorderly bankruptcy. It's been done in other states, so that's not our intent. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today, Representative Finlay. We appreciate your diligence in the legislature, and we look forward to more updates on a really tough topic for our state. President-elect Louisa is traveling for the next few weeks. She was here earlier but had to leave to catch a flight. Our speaker next week is the new general manager of the South Carolina State Fair, Nancy Smith. So please come and bring a guest and stand, and we will close this off.